What's up guys, and welcome to today's video. So this is going to be a new kind of series that I'm doing. It's going to be about mysteries that's happened and different kinds of murder cases and murder mysteries that's happened throughout history. And it's just going to be really cool, and I'm just going to be talking about all kinds of stuff like that. If you guys have any additional things that you want me to talk about or new topics to talk about, just tell me in the description. And I'll gladly do some research on it like I did this video and talk about it. The first episode of this kind of series things is going to be about H.H. Holmes and his murder hotel, or as some called it, Murder Castle. So H.H. Holmes moved to Chicago in 1886, but he was not originally from there, and he was actually trying to escape his past problems and issues that he had with the law and other issues like that. H.H. Holmes was also not the name he was born with, and he had changed it due to other laws and other things that he was trying to run away from. His original name was Webster Midget, and one of the reasons why he changed it was there was a missing boy and he was the last person to be seen with him. So many thought that he was the killer, which, going on with the rest of the story, he probably was. After leaving town, he moved to a place called Windy City, where he would soon get a job as a drugstore manager and clerk. And in 1887, Holmes would buy a piece of property across the street from the drugstore that he worked in. Holmes would eventually become the owner of the drugstore, and many believe that he did this by killing the original owner. On this lot, he would end up building a huge hotel and building. It would have over 100 rooms and just be crazy and have a bunch of different architectural things that were just not normal. And during this process, he would have many different architects and construction workers building it so they wouldn't catch on to what he was planning to do with the building. The three-story building would be finished in 1892 and would contain all the secrets that he had tricked all the people to end up building for him. The third story was going to be for actually where he was going to live and where he would end up renting out for people to stay in and have apartment buildings. But those people weren't the luckiest. The first story was going to be for people to rent out the buildings and have their businesses in there so he could bring in income and have more unlucky victims. And the second story was for those victims. Those who were unlucky enough to see the second story never really got to tell the story of seeing it. And those even unluckier than that got to see the basement. Some of the cruel, weird secrets that he hid inside his hotel, his building, the murder mansion, was secret trapdoors, soundproof rooms so they couldn't hear them screaming, doors that would only lock from the outside, rooms with multiple doors that led to nowhere, some rooms having a staircase to go to different floors, and some even had gas jets to gas out the victims that he put in there. And even the basement had its own secrets that I'll talk about in a second. After everything had been figured out about the building, it was called the Murder Castle, like I had already mentioned. When the World Columbian Exposition came to town in 1893 is when Holmes started to rent out his building for apartments. And because this was such a big thing and becoming such a big city, many people didn't notice when just random people went missing. He was known to seduce women and get them to marry him, and first set up a life insurance scheme so he would kill them or they would die and he would take their money. He was also known to make his employees buy life insurance and make him the beneficiary of all the money if they died. So when his employees just randomly disappeared and died, he would get all the money from them and just bring in, racking up the money from many insurance claims. And he would get even more money when he sold the bodies to a medical school, which I don't know how they didn't figure out what was going on and where he was getting all the bodies from. And like I said, many of his victims were his own employees. So many of them weren't forced into his building or forced into certain places. He would just tell them to go there, and he was their boss, so they would follow him. And that's what happened to many of the people who died in the basement. They would just follow him there because they were his employees and were doing what they were told so they could get paid. And he had about 150 employees in just 2 years, and most of them were women. And the employees that he liked the most, or victims that he liked the most, he would take pictures of to just savor the moment and savor his victims. Then in 1893, Holmes and one of his friends, Pretzel, would end up leaving the state and going to other states and travel around to commit more insurance frauds and make a bunch of money. But when Holmes was a little upset with his partner, he decided to kill him. So he ended up killing him, and then he was afraid that his partner's 3 children would become suspicious along with his partner's wife. So he ended up killing all 3 of them, so there wouldn't be anybody to notice that he was gone and nobody to point fingers at Holmes. And then in 1994, Holmes got arrested, but it actually wasn't his first time being arrested. And after he was arrested, this caused the cops to go to his residence, or his building, his murder castle, and this is when they got super confused because they didn't know this man for doing all this kinds of stuff. And they walked in and they were super confused because of all the different secrets and different things that they'd seen. Some of those included like the trapdoors and things like that, and it caused them to get lost and super confused. And one of the most significant places in the residence was where Holmes committed and killed most of his victims, and that was actually the basement, which was when the cops kind of noticed and put things together. He had multiple surgical tables, and some had women's blood, women's shirts covered in blood, and tables covered in blood. They realized that he had a crematory kind of thing where he would burn their bodies. They noticed that he would have places to acid the bodies and make them dissolve by the acid. They noticed all his surgical tools and all these things. And Holmes had gone to school for these medical things, so he knew how to do it. He also had torch devices in his basement to even make the pain and the deaths of his victims even more painful. After Holmes was arrested, he ended up saying 3 different confessions. One of them being that he killed 27 people, but the number could be anywhere to 20 to all the way up to 200s, that he killed more than 200 people because of the way he disposed of the body and all kinds of things like that. Holmes would eventually be sentenced to hanging, and after the floor dropped beneath him, he would end up hanging for 20 minutes before he died. And before he died, inside his cell, he would be quoted with these quotes. One of them being when he said, "I was born with the devil inside me." Now, any person saying that is not in their right mind and was not okay, and just overright, just not very in there in the head and not stable. And another quote from him was him explaining why he killed people. He would end up saying this: "I could not help the fact that I was a murderer. No more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing." And like I said, after he was hung, he would end up hanging there for 20 minutes, even though that is a very rare thing, and most people die as soon as the floor drops beneath them because of their neck breaking. But he would just end up squirming there for a while. And later, all the people that were involved in the case that ended up getting Holmes hung had their own personal issues. The man who snitched or told the cops or kind of gave them a lead on what Holmes was doing ended up being shot by the cops and dying. The warden of the prison that he stayed in, that Holmes stayed in, before he was hung, ended up killing him own self. The office district attorney who ended up arguing and trying to fight against Holmes in the famous case ended up catching on fire, and the only thing surviving on the attorney was a picture of Holmes. That was the only thing that wasn't burnt, and that's just insane. It gives me chill bumps even thinking about it. And one of the last people affected by him was the former caretaker of the Holmes residence, the murder castle, who would commit suicide and leave a suicide letter saying, "I cannot sleep," which means that he was haunted by all the presences of the ghosts and all the things that were involved inside that house, inside the residence of the basement, the second floor, the first and third floor, all the things that were crazy inside that house. And after he was hung, the speculation and understanding of how much and how many people that Holmes actually killed in his lifetime and hurt in his lifetime is still not known, and is the only number that they can put on it is anywhere from 20 to in the 200s and up. And that's just because, again, like the way he cleaned his bodies and disposed of them, and even selling them to medical schools around and making even more money through insurance fraud and selling the body parts. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you guys learned a little something about H.H. Holmes, or maybe learned about him, didn't know about him at all, and now know who he is. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please hit the subscribe button. If you guys enjoyed this video and want more of them, hit the like button so I know. And if you guys have any more ideas for any more videos like this, please let me know. And I will see you guys next video.